All right. Good afternoon, everybody. So I'm here to talk a little bit about BioLite and the work that we do in the energy access space. So just as a brief overview, so BioLite has a bifurcated business model where we operate both in the emerging markets, in this case, sub-Saharan Africa, as well as in developed market contexts. So in North America, in Europe, and we're based in Brooklyn, New York. That's where our main laboratory is, where we develop and design a lot of these products. And our emerging markets operations are based in Nairobi, Kenya. And we've, over the course of BioLite's involvement in the space, we've sold over 600,000 clean energy products. 95,000 of those have been in the emerging markets space. And so, like all good in-person lectures, I'm actually going to start with a video. So I'm going to quickly, I think it'll provide a good feel for where BioLite sits in the energy access space as a whole. So let me just quickly go to that. All right, here we go.
The electrification rates in East Africa on average are below 30%. And so that ultimately is the challenge that we're trying to address. Originally, what has been seen as Africa's disadvantage is now creating an opportunity for us to actually revolutionize the way energy is generated and delivered. With the traditional utility model, it's estimated that East Africa will achieve 80% electrification in about 35 to 40 years. That's a long time.
The traditional grid model and even large-scale capital solar programs require governments to motivate and raise large sums of capital to install major infrastructure and transmission. And these systems are going to take 20, 30, 40 years to reach the last mile of the population. Whereas with decentralized solutions, as soon as a consumer has that first $10 or $20, they can start to reap the benefits of modern energy access.
So that's incredible.
The widespread adoption of certain technologies, particularly smartphones and mobile money, have really permeated the population. And the grid has not grown at the same rate as these technologies. And so entrepreneurs have been looking for ways of leapfrogging the grid so that these people can really be able to use that technology and thus improve the quality of their life.
East Africa sits at an amazing intersection to pioneer the growth of decentralized solar energy. First, there's abundance sunlight. Second, technology has come to a place where it is sufficiently low cost and it really is affordable to smallholder farmers. And third, mobile money has created enough capital access that people can start to pay now in incremental ways that open up access today.
Western Kenya has blessings. We have access to sunlight, very bright sun. That gives us free energy. And then we have the community. They help each other out in case of problems. They believe in the aspect of togetherness. And they're like, yeah, we can empower ourselves.
Leo mimi mgeni wako.
Oh, karibu sana.
Ulikuwa
unaleta wageni.
Nini hapa?
Okay, yuko hapo.
Ni vizuri kabisa. Ingine umeconnect kwenda wapi? Mtu akiingia atashindwa na hivi stima hakuna Kenya sawa imepotea na yeye bado hapo na hatari.
It serves as a security. You can leave on the radio. It talks, someone thinks you are in, yet you are far, far away. So thieves cannot just enter. They will fear.
We go into these communities and go to these places where there's actually no energy at all. Where the view of the world at night is so restricted and so narrow, and where you're sort of living around shadows. And all that goes away. It's transformative.
The immediate benefits to the consumers are obvious. It extends your day from 12 hours to 16 or 20 hours, and that's a lot of valuable time. Kids can stay up later studying, you can listen to the radio, you can keep your cell phone charged and stay connected.
Once installed, you don't pay anyone else. That is you. It's free energy, You have a radio, maybe you have a TV, you have lights in your house. It's an amazing thing.
As we think about the marketplaces of the future, a grid in the sky, a decentralized solar grid that is cheaper, that allows individuals to control their access to electricity and maybe someday trade that electricity with other individuals, opens the possibility of what free solar energy can provide.
What we feel is that solar is going to create a new model for how people access energy. And that's what's so interesting to think, that there's an opportunity to rethink the next generation of grids, a new grid.
All right, let's go back to the PowerPoint. Yeah, so that I think sort of encapsulates where we sit in energy access. We're interested in leapfrogging. This is a term that comes from the telecommunications space, the conventional energy grid infrastructure, and we do that through what we consider the modern off-grid home, which would be a solar panel, a solar home system, and I'll speak a little bit further about our clean cooking products as well. And this is sort of the idea of this is generally like energy equity now, as opposed to sheer quantity of like grid connections. So it's a little bit different from the energy access development space as it has been previously thought about. And so one challenge of energy access that was sort of not only overlooked by the video, but is overlooked generally in the space is the problem of access to clean cooking. So we hear a lot about solar, but at the same time, in fact, there's actually more people who lack access to clean cooking and clean cooking fuels. So that's almost half the population in the world. That's 3 billion people. 1.1 billion people lack access to electricity. So you can sort of see the scale of the problem in relation to each other. And one thing about clean cooking is not only does it produce a lot of issues for health, it also produces, it also either costs a lot of money or it costs a lot of time for people to either purchase wood and other types of biomass fuel like charcoal, or to go to a phone recharging store. So in a lot of cases, there's no ability to charge phones in the home. And so this creates, as I said, time costs and economic costs. There's also a pretty big climate impact of unclean cooking fuel. So it releases black carbon and carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. And it's actually a pretty big impact, especially on the black carbon side of things in terms of global warming and climate change. And so where does BioLite provide unique value? So we not only have our solar home systems, as you've seen in the video, but we also produce clean cooking, charging, and lighting products. And in this case, as you'll see in the stove here, all in one. So clean cooking, charging, and lighting. So these are the two major products that we have in the emerging markets. So as I said, we're based in Kenya, but we work in a number of sub-Saharan African geographies, including Uganda, Tanzania, Rwanda, Senegal, and the list keeps growing. So on the left, let's see. you can see the Solar Home 620. So that's the product that was described in the video that you just watched. It's got 3 hanging lights. One is motion security activated, so you can place it on the front of your home, and when people pass by, it'll light up. It's got a 6-watt solar panel and a control box, which is this thing. And that houses a radio, an MP3 player, which is operated via an SD card, and it's also pay-as-you-go enabled. So this process is basically people can purchase time for using this product via their mobile phone. So essentially, this is connected to a digital bank account that they have, and then they will put in a code that's generated by our system. They'll send out the code. They'll send out a payment via a text, and then they'll be able to use the product for however long they paid it for. So this is kind of an innovation in the sector. And then the other product that I'm here to talk to you guys about is the home stove. So the home stove is an ultra-clean electricity generating cook stove. And I'm going to explain a little bit more how the technology works in a second. Okay, so this is a pretty innovative product in the market. It not only reduces 90% of smoke emissions that are produced, so this lowers the carbon, the black carbon and carbon dioxide footprint. It also reduces the smoke that people are inhaling. And it also cuts consumption of fuel by 50%. So this leads to either time savings or money savings, depending on whether the household is purchasing fuel or collecting fuel. And so this product operates by burning biomass. So in this case, that means wood, crop waste, and dung. It doesn't operate using charcoal. And essentially, the user feeds the fuel into the system. So they'll stick twigs and wood into the mouth of the stove. Then they'll light a fire, and I'll sort of show you what that's like. Thanks. Let's see. All right, so light the fire, and there is a thermoelectric generator housed in this unit as well as a fan. So the thermoelectric generator converts the heat that is produced by the cooking flame. It converts it into electricity, which runs the onboard fan, and that increases the efficiency of combustion of the fuel. And so that's what reduces the smoke, and that's what reduces the fuel amounts needed. And so the interesting thing about this is it also produces surplus electricity, which can be accessed via a USB port. And so what you see here is an LED light that we provide with these stoves. You tap it once. If this was working, it would go on, and then it'll light the cooking area in the night. The other cool thing is that instead of this product, you can put in a mobile adapter. Oops. Other way. And you can charge your mobile phone with this product. So that's generally how this thing works. In terms of the solar home system that we offer, our general, as I mentioned, our general model is to help users who low-income households in emerging markets, sometimes very rural, sort of move up the energy ladder. And so we do this by building modularity and upgradability into our products. So with the solar home system, you can actually add on expansion capacity. So we're currently developing a product that can power a television, it can power a fan, and so users can, after they pay off the entry-level system, the 6-watt entry-level system, they can upgrade to this larger unit and have a larger range of energy services. So now I want to move to how we actually, like, beyond manufacturing and designing these products, how do we get these out to end consumers? So we, unlike a lot of other players in the sector, we partner with credit-enabled institutions that are already exist within the market. This includes microfinance institutions, producer cooperatives, and banks. And what we do is we leverage their last-mile networks and their credit, like their available credit, to allow users to overcome the upfront cost barriers to purchase and to also get these products to the rural households that we're targeting. And so you can see here a number of the different microfinance and other partners that we work with. And sort of the general idea is that we're specializing in the sort of the technology side of things, as well as marketing, the sales process, and also technical service. And so basically it serves as like a end-to-end model for the customer household. So rather than just delivering the product, people use it until it breaks and then they're out of luck, we make sure that there's that the user understands how to utilize the product by either providing like embedding agents into different channels, like embedding our directly owned agents, like direct BioLite agents into different channels where they can demonstrate the product to groups, like loan groups within a microfinance institution, or we train partners, agents, to do the same sort of product demonstration pitch. If a unit was to break, or if someone wasn't sure how they would use it, the user can either call BioLite's after-sales service support center, where we'll answer any product questions, or if the unit is broken, we'll go out and like a technician, a BioLite trained technician will go out and service the unit, provide diagnostics, and replace the unit if necessary. And so our idea is that when we sell a user a product, they're going to be able to continue to use it for the life of the product, which in both cases is 3 to 5 years. And our vision is to sort of expand beyond the current markets that we're working in to across sub-Saharan Africa. We'd also like to move into East and Southeast Asia, anywhere where there's energy access needs. Another part of BioLite's business model is something called parallel innovation. So not only do we develop products that can be used in both emerging markets and developed market contexts, like the product you see here, which is actually not the home stove. This is the base camp. So this is targeted specifically to off-grid recreation users and campers in North America and in Europe. But it utilizes the same technology, so we can sort of leverage our engineering staff for both types of products. And we also take some of the revenue that we generate in the outdoor recreation sector and use it to lower the margins on our products in emerging markets, so that base of the pyramid users can afford the products in those markets. So here's a sort of a more comprehensive look at what kind of outdoor recreation products we have. And as you can see, we actually sell, there's like crossover products. So this product and this product are sold both in emerging markets and developed markets at different cost points. So now I want to talk a little bit about the kind of impact that we're creating, and then also how do we measure that impact. So in many cases, we rely on our distribution partners to provide us with data because we don't directly own the customer relationships. And so this can often, like when you're working in these markets, it's important to build, like, to have documentation around what partners will provide. And so when you're working in these markets, it's a lot messier than what you see in some kinds of academic literature, or even these wider industry reports about the kinds of impact that's being created. So I mean, as much as we can tell, these are estimates as good as we can get them. I mean, we have different data infrastructure that collects information about, you know, when we sold a product, how long the user is likely to be using them, and then we can extrapolate from there. But there's a lot of unknowns when it comes to like frequency of use, and so I would say the monitoring and evaluation of these of private sector actors is pretty key to figuring out like what's the impact of each of these companies. But on the whole, I think we can safely say that we've made a dent with our products in these markets. What we do on the sustainability front is when we generate CO2 emissions offsets, we're able to credit them via like UN agencies and other carbon emission crediting agencies. And so what we do as a company is that we retire a portion of the carbon credits that we generate to offset the emissions that we create when we are manufacturing goods. And so this is, and then beyond that, we are able to monetize the carbon savings that we create by selling them to other organizations that want to purchase carbon credits, like airlines, like governments, things of this nature. And so that's sort of the general look at how we operate in the market. You know, I'm happy to answer any sorts of questions that anybody has. It's sort of that's the end of the presentation. Yes.
Yeah. Sorry, I was just wondering. So, do you follow up with these communities like a year after you have given them these like clean soaps? Because I've read a paper before about like a similar thing they tried to do in India, in some rural areas of India, and they found that most of the households who they had given these clean soaps to weren't using it a year out because they just broke down, or there weren't like technicians available.
Yeah, so this is a little bit where our market-based model differs from like government-sponsored programs that like you're describing. I think that was a program that that occurred in like the 1980s, if I'm familiar. So yeah, we do survey all of our Kenya-based customers at 3 months after purchase, at 6 months, and then 1 year after purchase. And so they're able to provide feedback on the product, what they liked about it, what they didn't like about it, and whether it's working or not. And so a lot of times, as opposed to them calling into us, we'll call into them at 6 months or something, and they'll say, oh, it's not working, or what have you. And then we'll send somebody out to look at the diagnostics and either replace the unit or just fix it on the spot. In the case of partners in other countries where we don't have an embedded presence, we typically provide like extra products up front. And so if there's a problem with the unit that like let's say in Senegal, the distribution partner will just be able to swap out the unit. They'll send that unit back to us. We'll determine what the cause of the problem was, and then we'll aim to fix that as we move forward in the manufacturing process. A lot of times when people think that they report that the product is broken, but it's simply because they didn't know how to use the product correctly, especially with a higher tech product like this, which is maybe a little bit unfamiliar, especially the charging aspect on the stove. They won't know how to use it, so it's pretty important our customer service team to be available to answer these questions if they arise. But we try to provide demonstrations, or our partners try to provide demonstrations when they're selling these products. A lot of times somebody might purchase it for a friend and the friend won't know how to use it. And in that case, that's where our customer service support team comes in. Yeah. Sure. Yeah, I think that's fine.
So we're a developmental organization that's trying to look at what's the most cost-effective kind of approach towards, whether to invest in a power generating unit such as this, or to invest in like a 10-cent mosquito net, for example. I'm just saying, how do you kind of position your product within all these other kind of developmental options that governments can pursue?
Well, typically I feel like there's an energy access like funding space, right? So we're not so much competing with mosquito nets, but more like we're competing with large-scale solar energy plants or large-scale coal plants or something like this. And so, in terms of sheer quantity and maybe even efficiency of money, like large-scale systems will probably give you better bang for your buck over the course of 50 years. But we're more interested in providing energy access now with readily available technologies for people who are able to pay for them. Because someone who can have access to energy doesn't necessarily want to wait 40 years for that to happen, to have a grid connection. Yeah.
What's the average all-in cost of your solar installation in emerging markets?
So we don't actually install them, right? The customer can install it themselves. It's super easy. They just put on the solar panel and hang up the lights. So we sell the product at $60 wholesale to the distribution partner, and typically they'll sell that same product, I think for $100 over the course of, let's say, a year or 6 months, however long it takes for someone to pay for it. And there's a couple different payment models, right? So you can either use the pay-as-you-go, or you can have a cash-based system where the unit is unlocked, there's no pay-as-you-go aspect, and like a group of people will meet up, like it's called like a loan group, and they'll meet with the distribution partner, like loan officer. They'll pay in cash on the day that they're supposed to pay, and then they'll go back to their households. They'll like meet in a central meeting area. Sometimes people purchase them up front if they've got that kind of money. But it really does differ. But it's typically, at least in the Kenyan market, it's about $100 that they're paying over the course of a year.
In those Kenyan markets, what's the typical annual income of a family?
So we target households that are making around $2 to $8 a day. In the case of the solar home system, a lot of the costs that are being displaced can be used to pay for the unit. So a lot of times households are purchasing kerosene for lighting, which is expensive, it's dirty, it's polluting. And they're also having to charge their mobile phones either at their friend's house or at a phone charging station or a kiosk or something like that. And so with a solar home system, or even the home stove, because it has that charging capability, they no longer have to purchase those things. And so the idea is they're using those savings to pay off the unit.
Was it only one of the technical services and post-sales service, is it paid additional, or is it included in the price of the product?
Yeah, it's included in the price. So when we sell the products, we provide a 2-year warranty. The customer will register the product with the warranty, with our warranty card. And that's sort of like a differentiating factor between a lot of these government-sponsored programs and something like us, that's trying to build a long-term business where the customers are not only purchasing that one product, they're purchasing more products from us later. That's sort of the idea with the scalable solar home system. In the case of a cook stove, there's not as much scalability there. Once you have the stove, you can either buy one or buy more. but yeah, it's as a part of the purchase price. And so I guess in that way it can up the price compared to like a low-cost manufacturer that's just selling the unit at whatever cost they're able to produce a margin, and that's it. And so that's not the way we want to do business in these markets. So the design and development of the product takes place in New York, but the products are manufactured in China with like a ISO 9001 certified manufacturer. But yeah, they're manufactured in China, where the margins can be low enough to sell in these markets.
And so kind of as follows to that, I was kind of wondering if you could break down what the shipping costs look like, and if it would be potentially more economically feasible to leverage Goldberg and really use how much more local companies.
Yeah. So we've definitely explored these options with, like, in terms of local assembly and local manufacture. In what we found is that producing it in China and shipping it is cheaper, but we are actually trying to build a local assembly where basically the parts are shipped from, well, and this is specifically in the Kenya market, where the parts are shipped from China, they're assembled by a local manufacturing team. Another stove manufacturer that works in the same sector is called Burn Manufacturing, and they've got a pretty big team. And so we've sort of looked into that model. It is pricier, but there are those like economic impacts that are positive for local workers. These particular kinds of stoves and solar lights are too complicated to be produced locally. A lot of local stoves and not really so much local lights, but they're much cheaper. They more low tech. They do produce benefits from a smoke reduction and fuel reduction perspective, but not on the scale of something like of this product, which is sort of like on the highest end of the kind of product you can buy there. Yeah. Yeah, so this is sort of the advantage of working with existing distributors that have already sort of built trust in their clients. So we'll basically go in there, like an agent of ours will go in there into like they'll work with a loan officer. They'll go out into the field. A group of people, a group of households that may purchase the unit are assembled. Our agent will do like basically a sales pitch. They'll demonstrate the product. They'll show why it's interesting. They'll explain the value, and then people will either decide to purchase it or not based on that sales pitch. And then they'll sign up for like basically a micro loan that spans from 6 months to 12 months, depending on the partner. Either like on the spot, or they'll come back later once they convene with their group members, and then they'll either, some of them will purchase or all of them will purchase the unit. And so that's how we have convinced last mile households to purchase the products. But we don't go out and source the last mile households ourselves. Yeah.
Can you tell us a little about how you got funded to start this company? Like, did you have VCs and were they a particular type?
Yeah. I'm happy to go into that. So our original funding was through the Department of Energy, where we built this stove, essentially from like a technology idea to a commercialized product. We also leveraged funding from USAID. So those were the first couple of years. After that period of time, we were able to generate funding from investors. So A leading fund of ours is Acumen. Acumen is an investment firm focused on not only generating revenues, but also, or return on investment rather, but also producing impact. And lately, as demand has moved on, as we've begun to scale, we've taken on debt finance from other investment firms that are focused on impact. And so the debt finance is to basically to build the products, which will eventually sell to wholesalers, who would then provide credit finance to last mile households. So the working capital or the debt capital is super useful when you're buying units from a manufacturing partner. And then we also generate grants on a case-by-case basis. We'll have an interesting product where we're testing out a new financial instrument, or testing out like in a refugee settlement or something like that, where they'll provide finance for high impact but high risk projects. Yeah.
I know that you said but like what happens if someone randomly this microloan if they're unable to pay?
Yeah. So, okay. So the question was, what happens when a household is unable to pay for a product that they've purchased through a microloan? And so the way I'll answer that is there is always a risk of default. We typically work with high quality partners that don't do predatory lending, because there is that issue in that space. We haven't found that there's a ton of defaults on our particular products. Usually defaults occur with even more expensive products. So like a thresher or something like that costs multiple hundreds of dollars. Whereas a lot of times when someone purchases our product, it's like an add-on to like a loan portfolio that they've already purchased. So they'll be a client of, let's say, a microfinance institution. There's a major one we work with is called Juhudi Kilimo in Kenya. These clients already exist within Juhudi Kilimo. They've already purchased. They're already like borrowers that have built up credit, or that have built up a credit history, similar to the way we do with credit cards. And then they'll basically unlock the ability to buy add-on products like ours. And so typically we're not working with people without credit history that are at higher risk of default. But it does happen. In the case of a home stove, it's up to the distribution partner whether they want to collect it back or whether they're fine with leaving it out there. Typically when it's been used a lot, there's not much in terms of resale value. With the solar home system, the pay-as-you-go aspect of the payment plans means that the distributor can actually lock out the unit. So if people aren't paying for it, it just lies dormant until they pay for it again. So there's not really any risk of like collection. If they just don't pay for it, they don't get to use it. And then when they get money again and pay for it, they can use it again. So it's not super. It doesn't provide a lot of hardship on folks, I guess, especially the solar home system if they can't pay. Okay.
So what percentage of the target population has it?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that. What's that?
What did she ask?
Oh, sorry. The question was what percentage of households that in these markets have access to credit lines, and that's a question I don't know about, but for our purposes, all the customers we work with do have those. So
maybe the percentage of the units which needs to be serviced.
Yeah, so we see about 3% in market need to be like either receive a call about something's not working, sometimes it is actually working, and so we just explain to them how it works again. In terms of replacement, it's about 1%. Yeah, I mean, when this does happen, we provide actually 1% of units up front to partners, and so what we see is like if there is failure rates that are in line with our normal rates, they'll just swap out units, they'll send it back to us. But yeah, I mean, it is a cost but that's sort of built into the price that we, yeah.
I'd be interested in hearing a little more about the documentation you provide for getting the carbon credits, and does that take into account sort of some kind of a life cycle analysis?
Yeah, so I'm not like on the carbon side of things, yeah. But we have a carbon finance manager. He I guess manages the data processes for you know, use of stoves like on a daily basis, and then basically he calculates what that would look like in terms of emission reductions. When the UN is trying to calculate, like, or basically whether they're trying to approve the numbers that we send, they go out into the field. There's a field visit. There's a random sample of households that they go and visit, and they monitor it essentially for about a week, and they revise accordingly if there's a differential in the kinds of rates that we're saying that they use the products. I'm not sure about that, but it may.
You're replacing it every couple of years.
Yeah, no, that is a good point. I'm not sure about the intricacies there. Yeah.
Is there any way of knowing how frequently people use this stove, like on weekly basis?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely rely. In Kenya, we were able to survey the households, as I said, on that 3-month, 6-month, year basis. And then we ask these kinds of questions about usage rates. In other countries, we rely on our partners to provide that data to us. And it's whether they. That's sort of where we see the biggest gaps in our data is when the partner is providing us the data, and maybe they don't have a particular economic incentive to do so. So that becomes a difficulty for us, and that's one of the main risks actually of our type of distribution model as opposed to owning the entire value chain. Of course, that model also carries its own risks of having to generate huge amounts of credit finance, having to build these customer networks and this trust, and so there's definitely trade-offs. Yeah. Yes, we're a for-profit company.
So as I was talking about, sort of is equal to some of the international barriers,
Yeah, no, I mean, there's definitely the countries that we're in are in a large part due to the favorable regulatory environments. So we used to operate in, well, there's a lot of countries, for example, that have pretty big tariff rates, and that makes it difficult to operate in the markets. So somebody's, like a distribution partner, is less likely to purchase a home stove if the rate is much higher than the rate at which the solar home system is. So they'll buy solar home systems, but they won't buy the home stove because there's differing regulatory environments for clean cooking and for solar. But I can give you an example. We used to operate in India. The regulatory environment changed. Number one, where the tariffs on stoves became higher. Number two, they went through a process called demonetization, where they switched from cash-based to microfinance to, well, countrywide, but basically the effect was they switched from cash-based to digital-based. And then there was also like a stove program where they provided a lot of LPG stoves at super subsidized rates. And so all these regulatory changes made it financially unsustainable to operate in India. And so we ended up switching, or not switching focus, but like reorienting focus on our East African, Sub-Saharan African market. So it's definitely important for a for-profit business. I will say we're not profitable, but at the moment. But that's the goal within the next 3 to 5 years, is to be profit making. Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay. Well, thank you very much, Matthew.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.